on teeth, causing decay, it becomes clear that there was a deliberate intent to remove Tartary from all his story. In Greek mythology, Tartarus is the deep abyss that is used as a dungeon of torment and suffering for the wicked and as the prison for the Titans. There were well-established giants throughout the Tartary territory. The Tartarians are thought to have been Breatharians, a being who does not rely on the digestion and burning of calories from food and water, but instead rather receives energy straight from the ether, much how plants get food for energy. The ether is thought to be the very fabric of the space-time continuum that some would associate with electrons, the wind and the Holy Spirit, the atmosphere and the gases in the atmosphere such as oxygen, nitrogen, and hydrogen. Since Tartarians quite possibly had a completely altered digestion system from the one we now have, they have no need for toilets in their bathrooms. Additionally, there were no sewer systems or waste treatment plants found. Were they able to make their bodies so efficient? There was no waste created. The Tartarians were masters of masonry, brickwork, steampunk-style technology, universally free energy, and grand architecture. Their Roman and Gothic-style architecture can still be found in the current guise as water ducts, city halls, banks, water stations, cathedrals, churches, hospitals, and similar public city works type buildings. Their buildings were structurally sound and many are still in excellent condition today. And where did they grow their food and not found with no gardens present in many of the castles with little access to farmland? Tartaria, originally pronounced Tataria without the first R, is the name of the pre-Mongolian empire that originated in northern Asia before spanning the entire northern hemisphere. Great Tartaria was the largest empire during its time and would have still been the largest empire today. The denotation of lost souls spending eternity in Tartarus, the underworld, is due to the Tartarian Empire having been buried and wiped out during the liquefaction mudflood events, earthquakes, volcanoes, and weather manipulation, using directed energy devices to bury her story, along with eliminating the moon calendar and replacing it with the Roman Catholic Sun Gregorian calendar in 1582. The world of the Tartarians is literally the world under our world. The Tartarians, or Tartars, were the indigenous people, quite possibly founded by Noah's sons, making up the world-renowned Tartarian Empire. Amongst the Tartarians were tall people, averaging some 8 to 12 feet in height. They would have been considered giants to our current average height of only around 6 feet. However, back then the height of 10 feet was the average. Like the civilizations before them, whose heights averaged 12 feet, 50 feet, 2 miles, etc. Each preceding civilization had an average taller height than the civilizations coming after them, and each succeeding civilization had an average shorter height than the civilizations predating them. Statures are diminishing after each deluge and with each new astrological age we enter. Moscow, Tartary, was conquered by the Romanovs in the middle of the 19th century. Samarkand, the capital of the independent Tartary, was seized by the Romanovs' army in 1868. According to the maps of the 18th century, the border of Moscow Tartary was very close to Moscow. Such a dangerous proximity greatly concerned the Romanovs. It is possible that it was the reason for Peter the Great to make the decision to relocate the capital further away in St. Petersburg, to the swampy coasts of the Gulf of Finland. Here, the new capital of the New World Quarter was built, St. Petersburg. This location was convenient for the Romanovs. The capital was far away from the Hordian Tartary known as the Great Horde, and the subsequent term hoarding, meaning to take more than you need, which was completely against the Tartary mantra of just give back more than you take. In the case of an invasion from the Siberian American horde, it would be easier to flee to the west from St. Petersburg than from Moscow. Only having defeated Pugachev, the Romanovs got an opportunity to exile the convicts further to cold Siberia and even further to the Far East, to the coast of the Pacific Ocean, to Sakhalin Island. Moscow Tartary spanned the Urals, Siberia, Central Asia, the Far East, Alaska, and North America. The conflict between Moscow Tartary and Romanov Russia, originally small in size, ended in the second half of the 18th century with the famous allegedly peasant war against Pugachevs. The Romanovs succeeded in agreeing peace separately with Turkey and defeating the Great Tartary. Only after this, the European emigrants who had settled on the Atlantic seaboard of North America ventured west, inland over the continent. For decades, they seized the North American territories of Moscow. Tartary left without any governmental authority. Today, this has been beautifully but incorrectly narrated on in the Hollywood movies about the very noble white frontiersmen and the very bad Indians. If fact, the Native Americans were Mongolian descendants of Tartary. Or rather, in fact, this book has a lot of typos. The history of war against Pugachev, as it is known today, is a pure invention of the victors, the Romanovs. Pugachev's rebellion was a brutal war between the Romanov Russia and the Siberian American Russian state. This kingdom retained the old Russian horde customs and had its own Tsar, with his capital in Tobolsk. The Siberian Tsar was hostile towards the Romanovs, considering them illegitimate rulers of the western part of Russia. The Romanovs strived to possess Siberian Muscovy at all costs. They understood very well that the Russian people on the whole didn't support them, and many would rather prefer the regime of Tobolsk to the Romanovs' St. Petersburg. That is why the Romanovs turned the very existence of their Siberian neighbor into a national secret. To preserve this secret, the infamous secret police was created, where the executioners tortured and hanged those who knew too much. As a result, in 1776, straight after the defeat of Pugachev, the United States of America emerged on May 1st, 1776, where C. Mason, F-R-E-E, Mason, Adam Weishaupt established their territorial claims. The Romanovs went about ferociously rewriting her story and slicing up the vast territories of Moscow Tartary, including Russia, Ural, Siberia, the Far East, in America, Alaska. Washington and Oregon were seceded to the Romanovs in 1819 and the rest of North America to the USA. Up until now, the native Russian population of America is being persistently forced to forget their language and their past. This picture here, the Moscows of America. Note how many cities were named Moscow in the USA in the early 1800s.